Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Denise Hurd, Director of Research for the U.S. Poultry and Egg Association. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Darren Karcher regarding one of his current research projects funded by U.S. Poultry and its foundation. Dr. Karcher is an Associate Professor of Animal Sciences within the College of Agriculture at Purdue University. Welcome, Darren. Congratulations on your funded research project, and thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today.
Well, thanks, Denise. It's a pleasure to get to talk about what we're going to start doing here in the near future.
Perfect. Well, we'll just jump right in. So your study is uniquely titled, How Do Laying Hens Visually Perceive the Resources in Cage-Free Housing? Now, you have worked within the table egg industry for many years and can readily identify the research needs of the industry. Can you provide us some detail on this project and share how it came about?
Yeah, so it was about 4 years ago. I had an interaction with one of the co-PIs, Dr. Esteban Jurek Fernandez, over in biology. And he is in the field of ecology, and his focus is on avian sight. And what I found interesting in our interaction is he pulled up the computer and showed us a picture of what a chicken could see if it was looking at another chicken at 1 foot, 3 foot, and 5 foot. And it blew my mind because at 3 foot, it looked, Denise, as if you would take your glasses off, where you could sort of see a chicken, but it was really fuzzy. And it really made me start to think about the fact that perhaps we really don't understand how a chicken sees in a cage-free environment. And so that was really the jumping on point with Esteban, where we started to take this idea. And to be honest, we have been submitting this idea for about 3 years now to different funding groups with industry, trying to get people to understand we need to think about things a little bit different. And so this was fantastic to be able to finally bring this to a fundable point where we can go out and start to challenge the way that we think about cage-free housing.
Good. Now, I imagine that one of the challenges with sampling a diversity of cage-free housing is finding enough identical systems. How do you propose to address that in the design of your project?
Yep. So let's be honest. If we go to the UEP definition of cage-free, they've kind of lumped everything into these broad categories. But then if we take one category, let's say aviary, then we go out and we look in industry, and there's probably 500,000 different iterations of an aviary system. And there's absolutely no way that we can try to capture all of that diversity. And so the intent in what we are planning to do with this project is to try to take some of those different resources. So let's take the perch, for example. If we know that this perch in a housing system is located over here, and in this other housing system, the perch is located up here, what we're going to do is try to take that measurement and somehow quantify the distance of that perch from this location to some area in the system, so that we can compare this compared to this perch up here and measure that distance to the similar place in the system. So we're going to try to take the very subjective things in the housing design and put them into an objective measure so that we can actually quantify those differences. And so we're going to look at the nesting areas, we're going to look at the perches, the nipple waters, trying to quantify the colors that are used, because we know every cage manufacturer likes to put in their own unique colors, more indicative to their company colors and not necessarily to something that the birds may perceive. And so we're going to try to quantify those differences best we can in a survey, so that as we start to look at the data as we collect it, we can look at some correlations between the actual measurements that we're collecting related to the lighting and to how those birds are seeing things, and compare it then to some of these objective colors and perch locations and things like that within the housing system design.
What would you say would be the impact of this work?
Well, so the biggest thing right now is that when we look at cage-free housing systems, we know that most manufacturers have done a very good job of trying to engage the animal behavior and welfare scientists and trying to understand, okay, do birds have a preference for this type of location for the nesting area? Or do they prefer this type of substrate in the nesting area or the perch type or a whole bunch of different variables like that? The question I've started to pose to some of the behavior people, though, is when we look at a preference testing that we conduct in an academic controlled research setting, and they favor this nesting area over this nesting area, did we take the time or the consideration that perhaps it was how the bird actually perceived that nesting area that resulted in a preference, and not the fact that it had anything to do with the question we were asking from the way that the nesting area was actually designed? And so what we're trying to do, and what I'm hoping we can do with this, is completely take all of this information that we have generated in the past when it comes to lighting and understanding birds, acknowledge the fact that we're moving into a cage-free environment that we really know very little about from a housing design, and can make recommendations as researchers to industry on here's considerations we should have, and try to shift our paradigm to really start to look at it as a whole system. Understanding and recognizing that birds are going to see things very differently than us. They're going to use them differently than we intend, because although we might design a system like this and we can give that rule book to those chickens, I can guarantee that they will not follow that rule book. And so if we can start to understand how they're going to use that system and how they view that system, perhaps it will give us a new way of thinking and a new understanding, so that we can start to design our housing systems for 25 years from now, not something that we could necessarily go in and fix tomorrow. Some instances, maybe we can, but until we really start to go down this avenue of questioning, I'm not sure that we really know the true impact that it could have for the industry moving forward.
Do you think there could potentially have any beneficial aspects that could be applied within the turkey or the broiler sectors as well?
Absolutely. So when we start to think about asking this question from how birds perceive things, it doesn't matter if we're talking laying hens, if we're talking meat birds, and that could be chickens, turkeys, ducks. What it's going to come down to is finally acknowledging that perhaps they need to see things differently. So maybe some of our negative behaviors, such as pecking behavior, or the move right now to put windows into housing for broilers. And we know that one of the concerns is that if you have a ray of sunlight in that house, that sometimes that can result in piling. For some reason, we don't know why, but those birds are attracted to it. Well, perhaps if we start to look at it from their perspective, maybe it will become very obvious to us why all of a sudden, if there's this ray of sunlight, all those birds are attracted to it. So I think it's going to give us the tools and the ability to really start to question how we do things in all of our poultry species, not just the laying hens.
Very good. And just a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
It sounds like you have quite a bit of work on your hands to be completed over the course of a year. Is there anything else regarding this project that you would like to share with the audience that you have today?
Yeah, so it is. It's going to take a lot of work. The wonderful thing about this is we have an egg laying industry that is very open and willing to work with us. And so the ability to identify those partners to come in and be able to take light measurement readings throughout a day as their various lighting systems may dim up from sunrise to whatever the light is throughout the course of the day, and then dim down at night. They're more than willing to allow myself and my students and my collaborators to come in, make those measurements, ask questions, and really give us the insight that we are going to need to be able to complete this project. And so it's fantastic and always has been. And I really enjoy the opportunity of working with the laying hen industry. And so I'm really optimistic that at the end of this, in a year when we have all of this data compiled, that we're going to have something that they can really latch onto and be able to go back and start to translate to something useful in their own facilities, no matter what the design may be or what the lighting may be. At the same time, have been having lots of conversations with allied industry and some of their customers on, this is what we're trying to do. This is how we're trying to think about things differently. And I can tell you, there is this underlying excitement across anybody that is touching eggs right now about what we're starting to do. And so, if you can't tell, I'm a little excited about what I'm going to be doing. And so we're really hoping that this can start to be the groundswell to really look at things a little bit differently and push the envelope about how we think about cage-free housing, as we recognize that this is probably going to be shifting as a predominant housing system moving forward.
Well, Darren, I'm pretty excited myself. It is definitely a collaborative effort in getting the industry involved. And I think that that's excellent. It's going to provide so much useful data, as you said, not only for the egg laying industry, but for the broilers and the turkeys as well. So I know that myself, as well as all sectors, will be anxiously awaiting the results of your work. Like I said, you have a lot on your hands, and from US Poultry, we wish you the best in collaborating with the industry to get it done, and we look forward to your findings. I just want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule today to share your knowledge with us, to go over your project with us, and thank you again. We appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Denise. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.